Magic Tree House, Chapter 8, Midnight on the Moon, Part 2. Chapter 4, Moon Rabbits. Oh, wow, said Annie. She took a step forward, but Jack stood frozen. He wanted to get a good look at everything first. He stared at the ground. He was standing in a layer of gray dust as fine as powder. Footprints were everywhere. Jack wondered who had made them. He reached into his pack for the moon book. To his surprise, it was light as a feather. He found a picture of footprints on the moon, he read. The moon has no rain or wind to blow the dust around, so footprints will never wear away naturally, not even in a billion years. Oh man, Jack said. The moon was the stillest place he had ever been. It was still as a picture, and as stillness would never, ever end. Jack stared at the ink black sky. A lovely blue and white ball glowed far away. Earth! For the first time, it really hit Jack that they were in outer space. Look! Annie cried, laughing. She bounded past Jack, almost flying through the air. She landed on her feet, then she jumped again. I'm a moon rabbit, she called. Jack laughed. How does she do that? He wondered. He turned the page and read. The person weighs less on the moon because of the moon's low gravity and lack of air. If you weighed 60 pounds on Earth, you would only weigh 10 pounds on the moon. Don't just stand there reading, said Annie, grabbing the book from Jack's gloved hand. She tossed it into space. It flew far away. Jack started after it. He bounded up and down. Now he felt as light as a feather. Look, he called to Annie, I'm a moon rabbit too, where Jack's boots hit the ground. Moon dust gracefully sprayed into space. The book had landed at the edge of shallow crater. When Jack reached it, he tried to stop, but his feet slipped. He fell right over and lay on his side. He tried to stand, but he was off balance. He tried again, but the dust was just too deep, and his spacesuit was too clumsy. You okay? Asked Annie. I can't get up, said Jack. You shouldn't have been goofing off, said Annie wisely. You goofed off first, said Jack. Now help me up, please. Annie stared toward him. Don't fall, too, warned Jack. I won't. Annie moved very slowly. She half floated, half walked. Give me your hand, she said. Annie grabbed Jack's hand. She pressed her boot against his and pulled him up. Thanks, he said. No problem, she said. It was easy. You were really light. Thank goodness, said Jack. It's impossible to get up alone. He picked up the moon book. It was covered with dust. He brushed it off. Oh, wow, look, said Annie. She stood at the edge of the crater. What is it? Said Jack. A moon buggy, said Annie. The buggy was marked in the crater. It had 4 huge wheels. Let's go for a ride, said Annie. We can't, said Jack. We just have 2 hours of air in our tanks, remember? I bet we'll find the thing faster if we take the moon buggy. Annie bounded into the crater. But we can't drive, said Jack. I bet I can drive this, said Annie. It looks easy. Come on. She jumped into the driver's seat. But you don't have a license, said Jack. Who cares, said Annie. There aren't any roads on the moon or spotlights or policemen either. She was right, Jack thought. Well, go slow, he said, and he climbed in beside her. Allie pushed a button label on. The moon buggy lurched backwards. Yikes, said Annie. Step on the brake, said Jack. Annie pressed the pedal on the floor. The buggy stopped with a jerk. Phew, she said. It must be in reverse, said Jack. Let me study this. But before he could study anything, Annie pushed another button. The buggy tilted back. Its front wheels started to rise in the air. Let me out of here, said Jack. And he pushed more buttons. The buggy's front wheel landed back on the ground. The buggy leaped forward. Slower. I can't. I don't know how. Annie steered the buggy over the tracks on the ground. The wide wheels kept it from sinking into the deep dust. Careful, said Jack. The buggy zoomed out of the crater. Great clouds of dust rose behind them as they took off across the moon. Hang on. Annie drove the moon buggy over bumps and hollows. It bucked like a barnacle. I'm going through there. She pointed to an opening between two mountains. Jack held onto the dashboard. The buggy bumped toward the opening and shot through. On the other side, the ground was even rockier. Look for the fourth thing, said Annie, bouncing up and down. Jack groaned. Looking for anything on this wild ride was impossible. Slow down, he said. How? Try pressing on brake pedal on this floor. Slowly. Annie pressed on the brake. The buggy slowed. Jack sighed with relief. But now at least he could take a good look at the moon. He had never been to such a colorless, barren place. There was no green, no blue, no red, no water, no trees, no clouds, only giant gray rocks and craters and an American flag. Oh man, said Jack, that's from the first astronauts who landed on the moon. And look at telescope, said Annie. She drove near the flag and telescope. Then she put her foot on the brake until the buggy stopped. She pressed the button that said off. Then she and Jack hopped out. They took slow giant steps to the side of the first moon landing. Beside the flag was a sign. Annie read it aloud. Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969. We came in peace for all mankind. That's a good message, said Jack. He handed the moon book to Annie. Then he took out his notebook and pencil to copy the sign. Let's leave our own message, said Annie. What should we say, said Jack. The same thing, said Annie, but say we are the first kids. Jack turned to a page in his notebook. In big letter he wrote their message. Now I have to sign it, Annie said. Jack signed his name. Then he passed the notebook and pencil to Annie. She signed her name and passed the notebook back. Jack tore out the piece of paper. He put it by the flag. Today, the first kids from the planet Earth came to the moon. We came in peace for all children. Jack, Annie. No wind around would ever blow the message away. No rain would ever fall on it. It will be there forever, unless someone moved it. Thinking of forever made Jack feel dizzy. He shook his head to clear his thoughts. Then he remembered the time he had 2 hours passed yet. I wish I had a watch, he said, standing up. We might be running out of time. Oh, wow, a moon man, said Annie. What? Jack turned to look at her. She was staring through the telescope. Jack walked over to the telescope. Annie stepped aside so he could look, too. Jack gasped. In the distance, something was flying above the ground. It looked like a giant man in a spacesuit. And I guess that's it for today. And if you want to know who that man is and why he is coming to Jack and Annie, or does he not even know them and he's just on like a regular trip, watch the next video.